Welcome to the Virginia Carolina Deer Tracts podcast. I'm Mike Davis, and I am here to talk about everything hunting, hunting land, and the great outdoors in both Virginia and North Carolina. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another outstanding edition of the Virginia Carolina Deer Tracts podcast. I'm Mike Davis, as you know, and today we have a pretty cool guest with us today, Miss Meredith Powroznik. How you doing, Meredith?
I'm doing very good, and thank you for having me. I'm
Oh man,
excited to chat with you.
well, I'm super appreciative of you taking time out of your day to do this. Meredith, one of the things that I've had Meredith on my radar for a while to have on here, mainly because she is a Virginian. So, woohoo, go Virginia. But she is also a pretty badass bow hunter and a traditional bow hunter at that. So, man, that is just wild. But
Thank you.
for those of y'all that have been listening, a couple weeks ago, I had Zach Robb on here, and we were talking about the upcoming Whitetail Roadshow, which is something I am truly excited about and have been fascinated about. And Zach is one of the, I guess you'd call him panelists or seminar speakers. I don't know what the label is, but Miss Meredith here is also part of that, and she is one of the
Mhm.
speakers at that program. So, what another wonderful opportunity to talk about that upcoming event. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so how did you get involved with that?
Well, um, actually, if we start from the beginning, it all kind of started just on Facebook. I was posting deer on Facebook, and I don't know if you know Jeff Phillips with Star City Whitetails.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. So Jeff had seen some of the deer that I had been killing and he reached out to me and asked if he could post some of them on his page, and I was like, absolutely. Well, Zach Robb found me on Star City Whitetails. And so he was kind of watching me and the things that I was doing. And he actually reached out to me on Facebook and, just asking me if I would have any interest in, lone wolf tree stands and whatnot. And of course, at first I didn't really know, who the message was from. Then I looked up lone wolf custom gear and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
yeah.
This is something that I need to jump on. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. And that's where everything began to blossom. So it's crazy how simple things can just, you know, happen out of nowhere. But now I've kind of joined that crew with those guys, and they've been an absolute blessing. I've really enjoyed those guys, and they've been very welcoming. And, in Virginia, we've got me and Zach, and we've got Brian Thacker as well. And we're all, part of that Lone Wolf Custom Gear team. And Brian will all three be speakers at the show. This will be the third year that I've been to the show. Last year we had a really good year too, where we were all speakers as well, and it's a really good time. It really is, and it's a great opportunity for people to come out and get their hands on the equipment and actually get to use it some. And when you go to the other shows, you can see the equipment, but it's hard to really play with it yourself. And
Yeah.
So it's very educational. We really spend time with everybody, and I mean, you meet so many friends at these shows. That's a really cool thing too.
There are a lot of aspects of this show that I'm really, really excited about. And one of them you
Mhm.
mentioned, the whole hands-on thing. That is huge. Uh,
Absolutely.
I love the fact that it's much more smaller, more personal type of event. So you really have, a lot more one-on-one interaction. And just so many things about it. I'm beating a dead horse here, but you know, uh, another thing I've always, well, not always, but what I like about this is the fact that the seminars or the panel is basically local people. So you're hearing
Hmm.
from people that know how to hunt Virginia or
Right.
Carolina or Maryland or West Virginia. I know but they're in our area. They're in our neck of the woods. So, you all know what we deal with statewide versus, what someone in the Midwest, Iowa and Kansas, totally different style, different terrain, different deer habits and all that stuff. So I think there's just so many pluses to this. My only regret is like that you're not doing more of them. Like there's not like 5 shows across the state.
Right, right. Yeah. I think there's 4 shows in total that we're doing this year, in different states. Virginia, Pennsylvania, Iowa, and Georgia, from what I understand. So, but people, like Zach said, people travel from all over. And so that's what's cool too, because if you're coming from a long ways, a lot of the guys will camp out afterwards and cook out, and just sit around the fire and just talk mess, goof
Yeah.
off, talk hunting. It's a very rare opportunity, honestly. And even during the show, there's time in there during the show where it's simply just for everybody to just kind of mingle, get to know each other, talk about whatever, put your hands on whatever. There's going to be a lot of different sponsors there as well. Vortex, Hoyt, ICO, First Form, all of these guys are going to be there, and they're going to be giving away stuff as well. So, I mean, there's so many things to look forward to, and it's not a one-way road. We're learning while everyone else is learning too, because it's very conversation based, the seminar aspect of it.
Yeah, it's very cool. And if y'all didn't hear the podcast with Zach, let me give you the quick rundown of how this thing basically pays for itself for you as a consumer. The ticket is $50 cost, which that's not the cheapest ticket in town, but let's talk about what you get with that. You get 2 meals. They're going to serve lunch at this thing, and you get the dinner afterwards. You get a t-shirt. So those 3 things more than cover the cost. You can't even put a price tag on the knowledge and the relationships and the contacts that you'll make at this thing. But then you also, like you said, they're giving away thousands of dollars worth of gear, just given away, including a Hoyt RX9 bow, which is a $2,000 ticket item. And they're also, even if you don't win a prize, they're offering all kinds of discounts on the gear by all the different sponsors. So this thing is a complete no-brainer. If you are into archery and you are in Virginia, you need to be there. And you go to dyingbreedbowhunter.com is where you will find the tickets. And I will, like I did with Zach, I will put the link on all the info here. So it's something I encourage. And, oh yeah, almost forgot. You also can camp there. That's also included. So it sounds like a good time. And Zach has already thrown the gauntlet down and said last year Virginia's after party was kind of the cream of the crop. So we have a tradition to uphold here in Virginia. So
we do.
So I'm counting on you folks out there. Counting on you folks.
Yeah, and the youth come too. We had young kids last year, at these shows, and they really enjoy it. They really enjoy it.
Oh, I
so
bet.
It's cool. Everybody can come. It's a great time for all ages.
Nice. Now, are you the only traditional bow hunter on the panel?
No.
Wow.
Even
okay.
Yeah, Zach shoots trad. Cody shoots trad. I think there's a couple more that do as well. So, a lot of those guys are really getting into the trad stuff as well. So it's fun.
They just want to be as cool as you. I mean,
oh, well, I don't know about all that, but
right. So, for those that don't know, Meredith, how did you get started down the traditional bow hunting path?
So anybody who knows me knows that I am a daddy's girl to no end. And my dad was a huge traditional bow hunter. He killed mountain lion, moose, caribou, the whole shebang.
Wow.
Yeah, he could tell some stories. Sometimes I wish people were doing podcasts of him and not me, because I feel like it'd be way more interesting.
Hey, that's all right. We'll get him on next time.
We should. It'd be awesome. but I've got two brothers. And so, he started them out with compounds. And then I was a little bit older, when he started me. Of course, when I was little, he handed me a little recurve. And we were all in the yard shooting recurves when we were little. But he started me with the recurve when I was a teen in terms of actually hunting with one. And he handed me a pair of climbing spikes, and that's where it all began. And I ate a lot of tree bark with those climbing spikes. I'll tell you that right now.
Wow. You don't hear about people talking about climbing spikes very often.
Yeah. But no, that was the start to it all. My dad got me into it, and at first I was just doing it to keep up with my brothers. Because that was me. I was just anything that we were doing. If my brothers were doing it, I wanted to keep up, and so
Right.
that was something that at first I just started doing it just to keep up, and then when I finally started having some success with it, then I started to get that itch. Like then I started to become addicted, and I just fell in love with the challenge of it all. But it took me a while. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't come right away. That's for sure. I paid a lot of dues, and I still pay dues sometimes. I paid a due this year, so I'm hoping that next year is a good one. But
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say that any form of hunting is easy, but I don't know if I can think of a form of hunting that is harder than what you are doing.
it's challenging. That's for
Yeah.
sure. My dad always says it really perfects your four-letter word vocabulary,
I
and
bet.
he's right.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of patience and just knowing that 90% of the time you're not going to come home with something. You got to be patient and you got to wait
Yeah.
it out, and it's not an instant gratification type of sport, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, but when it does come together, it's so rewarding, and that's what has kept me so addicted to it.
With the successes that you've had, are you ever tempted to go the compound direction? You ever tempted to say like, yeah, let's step up to this now?
I can honestly, genuinely say that I'm not. And, I have so many people ask me that question because I had the biggest deer of my life broadside at like 25 yards feeding a couple years ago. And I had a lot of people say to me, well, if you were just shooting a compound, it could have been yours. And, they might be right. But the way that I think about it is that, like, if that deer was on my wall because I shot it with something I knew wasn't what I wanted to kill it with, I know that I would have kind of given up a little bit, and that it wouldn't have meant as much to me. That I want to do it the way that I know makes me feel like it just means the most to me. It's most rewarding. I worked that hard for it, and I got it. I got it the right way, not the right way, but my right way. The way that I want to do it. It makes me feel
Yeah.
like I didn't settle for something other than what I wanted, and I hope that comes across right. But
No, it
um
does. It totally does. And I very much relate to that. I mean, I'm not a trad bow hunter. I am a compound bow hunter, but it is my most favoriteest thing in the world. And when muzzle loading season comes around, I continue bow hunting through that season. I don't muzzle load
right,
hunt. So I
right.
guess it's very much the
It's
same concept.
it's the same concept.
Yeah.
And I can say also that since I've never shot a compound, I don't really know what I'm missing out on.
There you
You
go.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've always kind of told myself, like, well, at least if I don't shoot one, then I won't be as tempted because I don't really know what I'm missing. So I don't know. It's just where my heart is. And so I tend to follow that a lot.
Well, I mean, I think there's something to be said about that. We live in a world with people with very short attention spans and very gosh, what's the term I'm looking for? Instant gratification. So it's really easy to to jump to those other paths, to
Right.
try to get more deer or whatever. So I think it's a true testament to you and as a hunter and what you're all about that You're not even interested in pursuing that. You're sticking with your passion and the challenge of it. And I guess I'm trying to say that that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I guess that's where I'm going.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The challenge makes it that much more rewarding. So
No doubt.
that's
100%.
for sure.
100%. So, you got a lot of cool things on your wall there behind you. I see ribbons. You want to talk about that a little bit? I think you got some stuff in some record books, maybe.
Uh, I've gotten lucky a few times, and I hope my luck continues. I really do.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, that was my 2015 buck, nice 10 pointer that he scored Pope and Young. He barely made it, but he made it.
Hey, man, that's
So it
that's
counts.
awesome.
That was a good week for me. That I actually killed my first deer that week, and I had screwed up on many before. I would say I recovered my first deer that week. Several days later, he came right in front of me, right where I was hoping he would, and I was able to claim him too. And it was the best week of my life. Oh, it was pretty
That's
awesome.
awesome. That's great.
Yes,
That's great. And traditional bow, of course. So that's even more impressive. What is the
definitely.
what's the furthest you are comfortable shooting on an animal?
Um, I would never shoot past 20 yards, and that's why I didn't sling one at the guy at 25. You
Right.
know, um, my optimal range would be between 10 and 15, somewhere in there. Um, Anything under 10, you start getting the angles, and I don't prefer it as much. That's when things can get a little sketchy, but sometimes you have to take those shots, unfortunately. But yes, 10 to 15 is where I feel most comfortable. 20, I'll do it if I have to. I don't like to, but I will, and I
Yeah.
have in the past. Um, so I don't know. I think a lot too about the anatomy of the deer and the angle in which I'm coming into that deer, and if the deer's below me, getting a double lung, you're not. I mean, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. You're shooting straight down. So that's something too that I've kind of learned is I've tried so hard to get close on these deer. Sometimes you get so close that you actually end up hurting yourself. Um, you know, you live and you learn.
Yeah. Now,
But
when you're in your stand, since you're trying to get them so close, do you go 18, 20 feet high, or do you stay 15 feet to try to keep those angles less steep in close range? What's your strategy there?
so when it comes to my tree stand height, that is always very situational, right? Um, I will never go over 15. Okay. I just don't do it. In my mind, the higher that I go, when I think about the angle in which I'm hitting that deer, the higher I go, the further out that animal has to be for me to get a double lung or technically broadside-ish shot. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because that angle's so steep. Also, the higher that you go, your target gets smaller, right?
Right.
So I'm pulling 50 pounds and I don't have the speed of like a compound bow. So in terms of penetration, that's something that I really think about too. I don't want to be too high up where I could, be affecting how much penetration I get. Also, if I go super high, then I got to think about the time from when I release that arrow to when the arrow is actually going to hit that animal and how much that animal can move in that time.
Right.
Um, I don't know. I tend to stay between 8 and 15. 8 and 12 is like 12 is my sweet spot. 8, getting a little bit lower, it obviously gets a little bit like ugh, I don't know. I killed my 9 pointer 2 years ago at 8 feet with that Lone Wolf custom gear tree stand, and at first it was kind of strange to me hunting that low because I hadn't hunted that low before, but it pretty much boils down to just knowing when to move,
Yeah.
and knowing when to move, that comes from just experience and being with the deer, you
Yeah,
know.
I heard on one of the other podcasts you were on that you mentioned that you don't hang your bow. You pretty much keep it in your lap the whole time.
I do, I do. Have never hung my bow. I've always kept it in my lap. Um, for me, simply because, things happen fast and I like to feel like I'm ready. I like to feel like I'm ready for that, especially if it's raining and leaves are quiet and, you know,
Oh yeah.
anything can sneak up on you, and
Oh, no doubt.
you got a lot of motion you got to get away with, and you're typically pretty close to them. So I like to give myself as much, I like to be as ahead of the game as possible at all times. And so that's why I do that.
Yeah.
Um, but we did also kind of talk about how Mr. Wenzel himself was talking about movement and, deer, how they pick up on horizontal movement quicker than they pick up on vertical movement, simply because they're laying animals and they're looking for predators, of course. But
Yeah.
that is another thing. That is not something that I thought about when I started doing that. But it definitely makes sense now that I hear him say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before either, and that's an interesting point. And reaching for your bow, that's going to be your horizontal movement. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that makes a lot of sense.
And just it being so much more movement in general, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. Oh, stand height. All right. Sorry, I kind of got off on a
That's
tangent
okay.
there. Yeah, it's situational for me. If I have the right cover, I'm gonna hunt lower. If I feel like I can, simply because I'm gonna get a better angle, I'm gonna feel more confident with my shot placement, I feel like. But the higher I go, those things start to come into your mind as well. There's good and bad to both of them. It's just kind of figuring out what you're good at,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I think
in
there's
my
a
mind.
lot of truth to that. I think we may even been talking before about, confidence. And confidence is just a totally key component. It can make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. Oh, it's so true in every aspect.
Yeah.
So, and especially, in the trad world, your psyche, whoo, that's important.
Yeah,
That is really important. And, I'm sure in the compound world, it's probably, it matters. It definitely matters.
it does.
But in terms of, if I go out in the backyard and I'm not mentally there, I can see it in my target and where all my arrows are. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
The arrow wanders with the mind.
oh, absolutely. And having like a saying in your head or something that gives you that last statement of confidence right before you release. That is something that I have really, I don't know. I started doing it when I started having success. I noticed that I was doing that. And I was like, oh, there must be something to this. Like, this thing actually kind of works.
Yeah, they're real. I was listening to another podcast, and I think it was related to 3D archery, but it really covered the same concept. I can't remember the gentleman's name that was speaking, but he was kind of like one of these, you know, psychological gurus kind of thing, and talked about, the people that were super successful in it and how they had kind of that, I don't know if the mantra is the right word or whatever, but, they had that same process. That's why they were so successful is they had the same process and they said the same things to themselves on every shot. And his
Mm-hmm.
recommendation was like, when you're out in the yard practice, say those things out loud. Actually
Mm-hmm.
say them to yourself as you're going through. Okay, anchor here. Okay, doing sighting this. Okay, breathe this way. And, saying it out loud. And then it, just became part of the process where you didn't have to say it out loud anymore. But
Absolutely.
I
When
thought that
when
was
you
very
have
interesting.
right, because when you have a shot sequence, your mind doesn't have time to wander because you're so confident with that sequence that you've done it so many times. That kind of helps to put you at ease in terms of when you take the shot, I feel like.
Yeah. Now, with everything that you've got going on the hunting end of things, have you started getting into trying to self film your hunts as well?
I've tried. I'm trying, actively trying. Um, I'm using an Insta360 right now. I put it above my head with one of those painted arrow mounts. Um, GoPro I've done in the past on my forehead, but Lone Wolf just came out with a. What are you laughing? What are you laughing
I'm
at?
just the GoPro on the forehead. I don't know. It just made.
Yeah, and the thing is, because I anchor so funky, like way up here, I've got to put it like over here, so it looks really goofy. Um, but yeah, so I'm kind of steered away from that one. But no, so Lone Wolf just came out with a new camera mount, which is really light and it's super sleek. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to use that this year. That's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I saw one of your YouTube videos, and it might have been that 9 pointer from 2023. And there was some wild camera angle stuff going on.
Hmm.
And I think it might have been that Insta360 you were talking about. I was going to ask you about that because I was like, that is
Yeah,
wild looking.
yeah, it was. So I actually had a shoulder harness. And so I mounted the camera right here on my shoulder. And so what's cool about that is that you can like spin it all the way around and just record whatever angle that you'd like.
Man.
So that's really nice. I think did Zach say he was using one
Yeah.
on his compound bow? Yeah, I
Yeah.
imagine that would be a really cool angle. I would like to put it on my bow, but I don't have a stabilizer, you know what I mean? Stabilizer
Yeah.
hole. So I haven't really quite figured that one out, but I'm
Hey,
working on it.
just put
But
it on your
yeah,
forehead.
yeah, let's just tape everything to my forehead. I mean,
Hey,
what does it matter?
why wouldn't you?
You know? But no, I'm trying to figure it out. So I have been trying to do some, and I don't know. I'm a little technologically challenged, I guess
Yeah.
you could say. So I'm
Well, I'm trying it too, and it's, especially with bow hunting, we were talking about movement earlier, and it just adds another form of movement
yes,
to be able to be successful.
yes,
And I would imagine, I mean, and I've screwed up plenty of times with the compound bow with the deer 30 and 40 yards away. So I can only imagine when you're trying to get them 10 to 15, that level of challenge has just increased exponentially to try to make that work.
well, that's actually, I've had people for a long time telling me, like, record your hunts. And that's exactly why I haven't,
Yeah.
because I'm just like, all that extra stuff I have to carry. And then, you know, then all the extra movement and me, it just changes my focus from where my focus should be. And so
Yes.
for so long, that's why I haven't done it. But I've been trying to do more of it, but you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard to juggle both. Some guys are really good at it. I hope to get better at it, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. It's definitely hard. I got into it because I wanted to go back and self-analyze my own hunts. You know,
Right.
we talked about luck and all that before. I had a couple year stretch where, I lost several very nice bucks that I had shot, and just, the recovery it just didn't happen. And I was absolutely heartbroken over it. So, I said, well, maybe if I do this, I can really go back and see, you know, the arrow placement on the animal. That way I can better analyze, hey, maybe I need to step out, not track right away, or man, that was such an awful shot. I just wanted to know what happened, because
Right.
it just not being able to recover those animals. And I know you've dealt with this too, because I've heard you speak of it. Man, it's just nerve wracking. It's heartbreaking, and it's gut wrenching, and I could just come up with all kinds of terms. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
That's why I got into self filming, was to try to just get better, and kind of understand where I was screwing up, more or less.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of advantages to it for sure. And I think too, it's more so about just once you get your niche, once you figure out what you're going to use and where you're going to put it, and you know get used to that, and then I'm sure it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
finding the way that you want to do it, I feel like is probably the hardest part. And then once you figure that out, you kind of, you know, kind of
Yeah.
becomes a habit and it becomes a little bit easier. So, but
Now, are you are as a trad bow hunter, does saddle hunting work with that? Do you fool with that at all?
I don't fool with it at all. I know there are guys who trad hunt out of saddles. Um, I guess my mentality is that the way that I've been doing it has been working really well for me. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So,
Nothing wrong with
like,
that.
yeah, nothing against it. I just, you know, I'm there's so many things that you can get into with hunting, and if you really wanted to, you could just keep going down a rabbit hole. And so I just like to kind of I have a habit of, like, once I find what works and once I find what I like, I don't tend to venture out a whole lot more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I tend to stick with what I know and what works for me best. But so no, to answer your question, I have not done any of the saddle hunting. I don't really, I don't know. I don't really like moving parts when I'm hunting, and the ropes thing makes me a little bit nervous. I don't know. I like things to be very stationary, and I know, I have control over things when I'm hunting, and that makes me nervous. But I haven't really talked to trad guys about it, so maybe there's a resolution to that I don't know about. I don't know. But like I said, I've got my .75 and my .5 with Lone Wolf, and those stands are so light, and they really have worked for me. And typically, I go in and I'll hang presets, you know, during the summer, and that way, especially like if I'm late from work, and I'm trying to get into a tree, at least I have somewhere I can just kind of sneak in real quiet, climb up, and just be there if I don't have time to really do what I want to do with my mobile
Yeah.
gear. Um,
Yeah, there's
but
something
yeah,
to be said for that. I mean, I typically hunt with pre-hung stands, and it just makes access, getting in and out, so much easier and quieter. As long as you're in a good spot. Now if it ends up being a dead spot, that's entirely different. But,
right,
being able to get in the mornings and not make all that noise and be a little bit less sweaty when I get up in my stand, all
right,
those things. So I like the idea. I mean, I like the idea of being mobile, being able to run and gun when the time calls for it. Um,
absolutely.
but and I think I've heard you say this on another podcast, when you hunt the same farm for years and years and years, you get to know that farm pretty good, as far as stand locations and what areas work, what areas are the right areas to pre-hang those stands in. It's going to be a high traffic area year in
Hmm.
and year out. So, I have a lot of confidence doing it that way for that reason.
Right. And I feel like that's why it's good to have both, you have both options.
Yes.
So, so that's what I like to do. I love to run and gun when I have, when I know I'm onto something, and when I'm very confident about it, and when I have the time, then I really enjoy it. And it's exciting because you're going somewhere different.
Yeah.
There's always a new excitement in that. And sitting somewhere different and just taking it in and watching and seeing what you're missing from cameras and everything else. Um, you can learn so much. You can learn so much just by relocating.
Yeah.
So,
Now I'm okay. I'm gonna tell one of my shortcomings here, but I'm good with that for the afternoon hunts. But you send me out in the woods in the dark in the morning trying to find a new tree.
yeah. Yeah,
Nah,
I don't recommend that. No. Yeah,
nah.
definitely not.
I'm absolutely. I don't. People do it and they're great at it. Man, I'll go out there and I'll get turned around. By the time the sun comes up, I'll be like, "What the? Where are they?
Yeah, no,
This is the
absolutely
worst
not.
spot ever. What am I doing?"
No. If I don't have a tree picked out for where I'm going, then in the morning I won't go look for a new tree in the morning, because as soon as that sun comes up, you don't have any shooting lanes.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's always what
Exactly.
happens.
Yeah.
But my dad got me on the bright eyes, so he's always used those. You know what I'm talking about, the
The
bright eyes.
the reflector thing.
Well, yeah, the small reflector thing, you just stick them in the tree. Um, he keeps them in a medicine bottle, and we always have them in the truck. And so,
Nice.
um, if I'm going to a tree that I'm gonna try to get to in the morning, I'll bright eye trail it, so then I can get there and not make any extra ruckus on my
Yes.
way.
Yeah. Understood. Understood. So, do you also, obviously you bow hunt in the fall. Now, do you get into turkey hunting at all? Do you bow hunt for turkeys?
I do. Now that's been a challenge for me.
I bet.
I have been stubborn, but not successful. The last probably, I guess no, last year I committed to it. I say last year, so 2020, this was April 2024. Yeah. And then this year as well, I committed that I was only going to bow hunt. I was only going to take my longbow to try to get turkey. And my first year, I had a shot at one, and I was, turkey's kill zone's very small. And I became pretty distorted on where I needed to shoot the bird.
Yeah, right.
Um, he had mounted my decoy and brought his wings up under him, and I was rattled. I was rattled. I was so nervous because everything had come together, and I was by myself. I had called him in, and he was right there. And in my mind, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening!" Like, holy crap! I never thought it would actually work, and it did. And I came back to full draw, and I even got to full draw on him, and I hit him. I rocked his world, but I couldn't find him. So I was pretty heartbroken about that. I'm not gonna lie, but it was very educational, and it really helped me to kind of understand that what I was doing wasn't all wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because until things come together, you can really question yourself. You
Oh,
can see it
absolutely.
on, yeah, you see it online, you see it on YouTube, you see it on here, but until it works for you, it's like, gosh,
Yeah,
it
they
can,
make it look so easy.
yeah, it can get so frustrating. And that was the only shot that I've gotten this year. I had a couple birds come in within gun range. Um, I didn't take a gun with me because I told myself I was, I would be tempted. And then if I
Yes.
shoot it with a gun, then I'd be like, well, maybe he'd have come in closer and I could have got it with my bow. And then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm either gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna go all out or I'm gonna die trying.
That's
Either
good.
way.
Now, were you hunting in a ground blind or were you
A
just
ground blind, yes,
okay?
sir. Yes, sir. So, ground blind, and I put my decoys out in front of it, not far, not far. Um, I haven't, because I'm trying to film it too. So
Yeah.
I try to get the cameras all set up in the ground blind, and I messaged a lot of the trad guys on Instagram, like just trying to pick their brains and stuff, and they've taught me a lot with that, and so that's been kind of cool too because they kind of watch the journey that I'm trying to learn from them, and everybody kind of, especially in the trad world, everybody kind of learns off of one another, and everybody's so welcoming,
Yeah.
and everybody wants to bring you in, and it really is family. I mean,
I've found that to be the case in just archery in general. Even the compound guys are like that. Just whether you're shooting 3D archery or hunting or whatever, it's just a community, and everybody is so welcoming, and it doesn't seem to have all that kind of jealous, I'm a better hunter than you crap.
right.
At least in my experience, I'm sure some of that's out there, but um, that's one of the things that's just helped me fall in love with bow hunting in general is
Mhm.
exactly what you described.
Yes, and it is so true. It is so true. I've never and I can genuinely agree with that in terms of you saying like there just doesn't seem like a whole lot of jealousy in that world. Maybe I'm not in it deep enough to see it, but from all the interactions that I've had and just the encouraging messages, and everybody's quick to answer you if you have questions. Everybody's trying to bring you in to shoots and include you and everything. I
Yeah.
mean, I have not gotten a bad taste in my mouth yet, so I've been very pleased with it.
That's cool. That's cool. I know that you were talking about in your tree stand placement that, kind of 8 to 15 feet, kind of your sweet spot. So you must have some pretty good camo that you wear, huh?
I love my Osseo camo.
Did you see how I did that? Did you see
Yeah,
how I did that?
I like that. I
That
like
was my
that.
shining moment.
You're smooth, man. You're smooth.
Woo!
Heck yeah, I love my Osseo. So Osseo, and they'll be at the show coming up in August. They'll have some stuff there. And it's cool because you can't, get their stuff in retail stores. So it's nice to be able to put your hands on it and actually see it and try it
Yeah.
on. But what I love about it's geared specifically towards whitetail hunting. But it's got a lot, what I love too is just the absolute functionality of it. Because when I'm hunting and I'm trying to get close, you want to be warm, but you want to be quiet,
Oh yeah.
but but you don't want to have a ton of layers on and feel like the Michelin man and your
Oh my
string
God.
slap.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah. And your string slaps your arm. And it's just, how frustrating it can be to find something that works functionally in every aspect.
Yeah.
Um, and I can genuinely say that this brand they're killing it.
Yeah.
They're really killing it in terms of that. I could go on and on talking about some of the stuff that they sell, but I will just say that in terms of getting close and hunting whitetails, I'm convinced, and I really enjoy it. And they just came out with a new pattern. It's Wrap X. So it's a pattern that's based off of like a predator type of pattern. It's based off of like the wolf and the mountain lion, and it's really cool. And they've got two different ones, right? So one's based off of the owl. That's specifically more so for people who are hunting out of the trees, blends in very well. And then the predator based new pattern that they've come out would be more so for ground stalking. I'm definitely going to try to wear it for my elk hunt. I'm really excited. It looks pretty slick.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah,
Very cool. And they will
yeah,
be there with samples, I guess, or uh, different things you can
they'll have some gear.
see and
Yep.
feel and touch at the Whitetail Roadshow, right?
Yes, yes. They've got that Sherpa line. I love Sherpa. All girls love Sherpa. Let's be honest. Like all guys
I
love
wouldn't know
Sherpa. Do
about
you
that.
like Sherpa? You know a Sherpa. You know Sherpa.
I don't know Sherpa. Tell me about
Oh
Sherpa.
my goodness. All right. Well, you're gonna have to get you a Sherpa something because you got to figure out what we're talking about. You need to
I
get an
mean,
Osio jacket. That's what it is.
we're talking about clothes, I take it.
Yes, it's a yes. So it's a Sherpa lining, really soft lining.
Okay,
Very warm, very warm.
nice.
And their stuff's really windproof as well. And so yes, in terms of functional, it's very functional. It's really nice. So if you
Cool.
haven't tried it out, you should.
Well, hopefully they'll have some Sherpa up at the Whitetail Roadshow.
Oh,
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I mean, but you're exactly right. There's a lot of great camo patterns out there, a lot of, great clothing, but, especially for bow hunting, noise, some of the clothes and some of the jackets just sounds like you're crumpling aluminum foil every time you move your
Right,
arm.
right. And like those puffy jackets that people wear. They're so warm. They're so warm, and you can crumple them down so tiny, but typically they're so loud. Do
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Azio has a puffy jacket that they've, come out with, and it's so perfect because you can rub together, move, and it's so warm, it's so light, it's compact. You can move in it with no sound. It's so quiet. So especially and it's reversible. So I would wear it turkey hunting. I'd flip it inside out, wear it turkey hunting because when I'm in the blind, I wear all black, solid
Yes.
black in the blind. And then elk hunting, you're trying to carry all the stuff in your pack. So to be able to have that as an extra layer and have it so small, it's really nice. So it's just very well thought out clothing, and they're constantly innovating, and I'm excited to see where they go.
Well, cool. Now, cool. You mentioned the elk hunt. So where are you elk hunting?
I'll be out in Colorado.
Okay.
Yep. So I drew a tag. So hopefully we can make it happen. That'll be fun. That's always one of those hunts that no matter what happens, you always feel like you've done something by the end of it because they're
Yeah.
usually pretty tough.
Yeah. I can imagine. Is this
Yes.
your first time going on an elk hunt?
No, this will be my fourth year. This will be my fourth year. Yes. So it's been awesome. I've had some amazing hunts. I'm very fortunate in that one of my dad's buddies, he's a pretty awesome elk hunter, and he goes out there, and I fly out and I'll meet him out there, and some of his family, and we got a good little group, and
Nice. That makes a difference.
yeah, yeah. So I try to. Right now is the time of year where I'm trying to train for that and like really get myself prepared so that when I go out there, I'll be ready to rock and roll on day one.
Yeah, that's some difficult terrain, I would imagine.
It definitely is. That's for
Yeah.
sure. It's no joke. You got to be ready, and people don't realize, hydration. Oh my gosh, it's huge. And people go out there, they haven't exercised, they haven't hydrated, and it'll put you on your heels. That's for sure.
It'll put a whooping on you.
It will. It'll teach you something.
Yeah, that's right. Things you may not want to know.
Yeah, things you may never want to learn again.
That's right. That's right. Now, do you do a lot of out-of-state hunting?
I don't really know. On my whitetail hunting, I stick around Virginia. Colorado, that's where I do my elk hunting, and that's really the majority of, out of state hunting that I do. I don't get a whole lot of time off with my job, and so I try to keep my whitetail stuff pretty local. I
No.
know a lot of guys hunt all over and they run the roads on the weekends, and I can't. I don't know. I don't know. That's a lot. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
it is. I've got buddies like that too, and they're always inviting me, and I appreciate the invitation. And in an ideal world, I would love to do all of that. But there's something to be said about hunting in your backyard, more or less, and your own place, your own piece of land, uh, where you can just you just learn, you just spend so much time there, and it's very special. When you harvest an animal on your own land in your own backyard, per se, I don't know. There's just something about that trumps all that travel for me.
Right. And like I said, it's just a matter of what tickles your fancy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Some people that's what they love. They love the challenge of going to a new state and killing, and that's what gets them going.
yeah.
So
I mean,
I
and there's
get it.
nothing wrong
I
with
get
that.
it.
I'm certainly not looking down my nose at it, and
Abs- Right, right.
and things may change. I certainly don't have anything against it, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know, if I had more time off of work, I think I would love to do it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
you
It-
know,
it's kind of one of those things like, if I win the lottery, I may not tell anybody, but there'll be signs.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of one of those deals.
Yep, there's your sign.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know, speaking of backyard, I just got to bring it up. You've got a great story about a backyard buck that you may be tired of talking about, but I love hearing the story every time I hear it. And I want you to share it here if it's okay with you, 'cause I just
Absolutely.
think it's a great story.
Yes. Okay. So the year was 2015. I
We
was,
hit my way back machine,
yeah.
right?
So I was at home studying for my board exam. And I had my bedroom was in the basement, and it was a walkout basement. So my desk was right in front of the window, and outside of the window were all of our deer targets. And I had just woken up, got myself a bowl of cereal, and I sat down in front of my laptop to start taking a practice test. And I looked up, and there was this little spike, and he was like walking around the yard. And I kept doing my exam. And I look up, and he's mounted our deer target right in front of my window. And I thought it was the funniest thing. And so, I had to record it.
Of course.
If you want the footage, I'll send it. I've got it.
I think it's on your
Uh,
YouTube channel.
It probably is. It probably is. But so I was like calling I recorded it and then I put some Marvin Gaye to it because you
Perfect.
gotta, you gotta set the scene, you
Oh,
know?
that's right. Got to set the mood.
Um,
There it is.
right. And so I was like, sent it to my mom and I sent it to my brothers and I sent it to a bunch of people. And my brother calls me up, my younger brother, Van, and him and I are really tight. He calls me up and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" He's like, "You're just filming it." And I'm like, "I mean, yeah, it's funny." He's like, "Why aren't you trying to shoot it?" And I was like, I don't know. It hadn't really crossed my mind because I didn't think I could actually sneak out of the house to shoot it. You know what I mean? So I hung up with him and then I got to thinking about it and it was still out there. He still was doing his, I was like, good Lord, he's giving me so much time. I'm, might as well. So I ran out to the garage and I grabbed my bow and I snuck around the house and, you know, he was very distracted and I slung an arrow and, I hit him a little further back than I wanted to, but I got him and I ended up with him. And it was funny because after I shot him, I knew that I had shot him a little far back. And I had a feeling I'd gut shot him because the way that he jumped off and he kind of arched his back and he kind of walked off. You know what I mean? Um, so I didn't say anything to anybody when I shot him because I was like, I don't know. I was hesitant and I
Yeah.
wanted to wait. I wanted to do what?
Almost didn't want people to know at that point.
I know. I was like, okay, I don't know if I should even tell anybody about this. I feel
Right.
kind of bad, but I'm also kind of excited, like, you know. So, anyways, my dad comes home from work, and he walks into the kitchen, and he always goes straight to the M&Ms, and he's sitting there, and he's eating the M&Ms, and he looks at me, and he's like, "Your mom showed me that video of the deer mounting the target." And he was like, "That was so funny." And I was like, "Yeah, it was, wasn't it?" He was like, "Yeah." He was like, "You should have shot that thing." And I just kind of looked at him and he knew. Like he knew. He just looked at my face and he was like, I remember looking at his face and he's got that handful of M&Ms and a mouthful of M&Ms. And he looks at me, he goes, "No." So I was like, "Yeah." I was like,
Oh
"I
my
did."
gosh.
And he was like, well, where is he? And I was like, "I don't know. I didn't go looking for him because I knew that I shot him further back and I knew I needed to give it some time." And so he was like, "Well, let's go." Oh, he was so hyped. He was so hyped. He
Yeah.
couldn't finish chewing his M&Ms. He was running to the garage. He was like ready to get his boots on.
Oh my God.
And we ran out there and we ended up finding it. And I took a picture with the deer with the spike in front of the target.
Of
And
course. Why wouldn't you?
yeah, it was momentous. It was.
Man, that was a let me see, how do I want to phrase this? That was a very determined young buck to
Oh,
keep trying that long.
oh yes.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, you had time to film it, you had time to put music to it, you had the time to take phone calls, you had time to go out and get your bow.
I told Joe, I was like, well, that target was really hard. So it was, things weren't working out the way that he had planned. So he was there for a while, but it
Dude
helped
was
me.
that dude was not taking no for an answer. It just won't happen.
No, and the target had horns on it too. So yeah, it was the whole
Oh my gosh. Look, I gotta
the whole
stop. I gotta stop. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. You were
yeah.
trying to get me to say something that's gonna get me in trouble.
Yeah, let's just say it was wild,
Yeah.
but it was very humorous and a very memorable deer story.
You will be telling that story for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah, I will never forget it. I will
Yeah.
never forget it.
It wasn't it one of your first deer?
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was the first year that I actually recovered because I had been trying to hunt with my trad stuff when I was a teenager and I had shot a couple deer, but I never recovered any of them. And that's that's where I got so discouraged.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's where I said, thank goodness for my dad, because if it weren't for him, I don't know if I'd have stuck with it, because I couldn't, I couldn't get it together. It was all the little things that were going wrong that I didn't even know could go wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, for example, when you're shooting a compound, you come back, it rolls over, you anchor, you're ready. Like with, starting with a recurve, I didn't even think about the fact that I might not come to full draw. You know,
Mm.
that was one of my first mistakes on the first deer I shot at. And then, I don't know, I just had different things like that happen. Even this big one, 2015 buck right here, you know, I felt very confident with that. But when I drew on him, I guess I was so hyped up. I shoot split. And so I was squeezing the nock so tight that when I drew back, the arrow actually came off the shelf and was laying across my forearm. And I was at full draw with him at 15 yards broadside.
Oh wow.
Yes.
You're just gonna
So
have to swing it back around to get it back on there.
yeah, I had to. Well, yes, I did actually. I had to like kind of bump it back to get it on the
Yeah.
shelf. But thank goodness I had practiced so religiously. I felt so good with that shot. So I had the confidence. Now, had I not had the confidence in taking that shot, I think I would have screwed it up. But
Yeah.
it's funny too, because one day you can feel so confident with what you're doing, and the next day you can just be like, what's going on? You know,
I
it,
do
it
that
can
all
go,
the time.
yeah, I mean, it can change gears on you so fast.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's what keeps it exciting, right?
Yeah. It's never the same day, you know. What's that saying about a river? You never step in the same river twice, something like that. It's it's
Yeah.
it's it's like that. It is
Right.
100%.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but it keeps us coming back for more.
It does. It
It
does.
does.
Well, speaking of coming back for more, Meredith, I think we're at a good point there. I don't want to keep you all night. I could certainly do it. I feel like I could talk to you for hours on end. But man, I think what you do is amazing. I think it's great. 100% support you and 100% rooting for your continued success and everything that you're doing, and totally appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast with me tonight. And for those of y'all listening out there, y'all need to go to the Whitetail Roadshow, meet Meredith, hear more about the things that she's got going on, as well as all the other people like Zach and Brian Thacker, I think you
Brian.
mentioned. I think
Hmm.
it's going to be a phenomenal time. I am super excited about it, and I hope everybody else out there is too, because I really didn't know that much about it. So I'm like a kid at Christmas. I'm just chomping at the bit, like, man, this thing can't get here fast enough. So excited. But
Yeah, it's going to be a really good time. We're
yeah,
looking
it
forward
really
to it.
is. It really is. So I will certainly put the link for the dyingbreedbowhunter.com. I will put all the links to your social media stuff there. So if people want to follow along in your journey, Facebook, Instagram, I know you have a YouTube channel. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you feel like we need to talk about?
Not really. I think we did all right.
Yeah, we got through it. We didn't cuss
Yeah.
nobody out.
No. No,
I
we didn't say anything too incorrect, I hope. I
no,
think we did all right.
no, I think so. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. Hopefully you'll come back and we'll do another one day and we can dive into some other stuff.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's
I would
awesome.
love to.
Thanks again, Meredith. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. It's been a great conversation, and man, I guess that's all I got.
I'll see you in August.
Absolutely. Thanks, Meredith. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.